Welcome to today's episode where we talk with Saurabh, a brilliant software developer and entrepreneur who started an ISP company straight out of university with just a few $1,000s in his pockets. This initiative eventually led to the sale of his startup to Telstra, one of Australia's leading telecom giants. But that was just the beginning for Saurabh. Now, as the CEO of TrialKey, Saurabh is transforming the clinical trial industry using AI to boost success rates while reducing costs and time. In this episode, we'll dive into his entrepreneurial journey, uncover the lessons he's learned along the way, and explore his deep passion for meditation, a practice that plays a major role in his life. Stay tuned for a conversation filled with insights, tech, startups, and mindfulness.
Hi everyone, welcome back to The Curious Coconut. Today I'm joined by my co-host Thong and a very special guest, Saurabh. Saurabh is an interim CEO at Opyl at the moment, but he has many different roles that he takes part in. Saurabh, do you want to quickly introduce yourself to our audience, just so they can get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, totally, Eddie. So software engineer by trade. Did a tech startup when I was young, sold it off to Telstra. So I've always been a bit tech and a bit on the sales side of things. So spent a decade or so in SaaS software sales, kind of worked my way up through there. Then I got more technical, was a product director, solution director for a couple of companies. Then CIO for a large public listed company. And then got a CEO gig quite a few years ago now for a public listed company, grew that from about 20 mil to 100 mil. Exited out of there about 3 years ago. So now I'm on about half a dozen company boards that kind of help CEOs go through their kind of growth journeys. And I guess the most interesting one takes up most of my time these days is Opyl. We've got a product called TrialKey, which is an AI tech platform in the clinical trial space.
Wow, sounds like you must be quite a busy person. Um, but as I was looking at your website and your LinkedIn, I saw they call you the CEO Whisperer. Why is that? And like, what does that mean?
Yeah, totally. So when I first actually exited out of the company urbanized $100 million business I mentioned, the original plan wasn't really to work that much anymore. Um, but then one of the companies we tried to buy, they asked me to join their board, and then I joined another board, and I actually thought, hey, there's something to this board work. It's only work about 2 days a week now. I'm not actually that super busy. I think busy is the new crack, if you ask me, or the new smoking. Um, so then I thought, well, if I want to do this properly, I've got to kind of brand myself. And I guess my core differentiator is I'm an ex-CEO. And you get very, very few ex-CEOs that are actually on company boards that have kind of done it, have kind of succeeded, and can just kind of help chat and guide to other people that are on the journey.
So you basically get onto the boards of many different companies and then help the CEOs to take the company to the next level.
Yeah, pretty much. And I mean, they all kind of vary. I mean, some CEOs, they actually don't need a lot of my help, a lot of my competence. It's more around kind of governance, some of those kind of things. Some of them you're a lot more hands-on, and some are somewhere in the middle. It just depends on what crisis is happening when.
Okay, sounds good.
So you mentioned a little bit of your history already regarding your career. Could you perhaps describe some of your major highlights?
Yeah, totally. I mean, just I'll give you a bit more context. So, 10th grade high school holidays. This was 90, 96 would have been. So that's when the internet first started. You had dial-up internet. So I borrowed 4 grand from my parents and I set up an internet service provider in my bedroom. So around that through high school, around that through uni, and that was like a great experience on how to do like a real tech startup back before it was the cool thing to do. Yeah, 2,500 customers, a dozen odd employees, and I exited that out to Telstra back in 2001, 2002. So that was probably a huge thing. Then I finished off my software engineering degree, did an MBA, did a Master of Business Tech. Then probably the next major highlight was a CIO for a publicly listed company, a company called DTZ. Since we've merged with Cushman Wakefield, publicly listed, responsible for tech in about 52 odd countries. Again, that was super exciting. That was like the pinnacle of my career. I told my wife at the time that was my last job, and I was 60. I'd be like, this has been like a great career. And through a bit of luck, bit of hard work, bit of right place, right time, I got the CEO of a publicly listed software company. Again, dream job, like every tech person that I know wants to actually
Yeah.
run their own tech business. And it was a great opportunity that I got and was there for about 5 years, CEO for 3. and kind of went through a really cool growth journey with those guys as well.
Yeah. One thing I want to know more about is like your very first startup, because I think a lot of young people, they want to start their own startup. Um, how was that process like? Like when you started the first startup, and what was your like entrepreneurial journey back then?
Yeah, so let me give you a bit more context. So I grew up in Australia, but went to high school in the States for about 4 years.
Yeah.
So when I came back here, it's when dial-up had only just started, and I saw it bloom in the States, and I saw the price people charging there, the price here, and I totally thought there was a market for an ISP. Back in the days of Aussie Mail, before Big Pond, like really, really early on. And I think
Wait,
I was
what's an ISP?
internet service provider. So that's who
Oh,
you
okay.
picked up for your. This was way before cable and ADSL. This is when you used to have dial-up modems.
Yeah.
And back when I was young and naive, I just didn't know any better. And it's a great place to start. And young, no mortgage, no expenses, living at home. You just tend to naturally have like a higher risk tolerance because if you fail, nothing, it doesn't actually really matter.
Yeah.
And it was the best experience ever because you actually get to experience all the different aspects of running a company. You figure out what works and what fails, and you get some very, very quick feedback. Because it's easy to work in like a large company and throw rocks at other people or CEOs or management. It is so different when it's just you and you got to
Yeah.
figure out how to actually make this work.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure. I'm just curious as well. Did you have anyone else on board when you first started, or was it just you yourself and
It was just me. I mean, I borrowed the money off my parents,
yeah.
and it was just me and just figuring out how to actually kind of bring this all together.
Wow, okay.
and what did it feel like making, because
Mm.
I think every founder's dream is to like make an exit. So since you were able to sell your company off to Telstra, like what was that feeling like?
Look, it was kind of okay. I mean, it wasn't quite as exciting as I thought it was going to be. So the reason I sold was 2001. That's when ADSL had first started to come out. Um, and I had 56.6K modems, and ADSL had to buy these D slabs, which were like 18 million bucks in exchange. And I was like a 21-year-old. I didn't have $18 million per exchange to go upgrade. And Big Pond were paying overs. They were paying multiples of revenue back in those days for acquisitions because they wanted to build up their Big Pond brand. So just right place, right time, did really, really well. Um, and then for some strange reason, I actually don't know why, I didn't actually do another startup. I haven't done another startup since, except for one that I'm dabbling in now.
Hmm.
I just went to like a normal job in a larger company and just kind of worked my way through there.
Like, did you have any reason for that? Like not starting another startup, or like did you just like the
Um,
company you went to work for?
I think just sometimes life is just about chance and a bit about luck kind of thing. And by
Yeah.
that time, I was a bit older. Had my first two investment properties kind of then. So yeah, kind of actually have a lower risk tolerance. Got a job I was kind of quite happy with, and just life just happened.
What was that
Sounds
transition
amazing.
like? I'm kind of curious, moving from your own startup to a more like corporate style life. Oh, what was that like for you?
Yeah, so because I mean, so when I started, I worked for a company called Frontier. It's a payroll HR company, probably 150 odd employees, maybe I don't know, 15, $20 million revenue. So not super big, not super small. But then you start right down the bottom because, like, in their eyes, you're still like a young 21-year-old. And
Mm.
then all this stuff you've learned before is suddenly not valued.
Right.
Um, so if you weren't circumspect enough, that might be a bit demotivating. But what you find though is all the stuff you learn just helps you climb up the ladder much, much quicker. So I did that, and what I found throughout my career, every 18 months, you tend to just find a promotion because you've kind of done well, you've mastered your role, people around you kind of figure out you're a competent enough person, and they push you forward to a more complex task until you kind of reach the top in whichever area you choose.
Cool, cool, cool. I want to transition a bit towards like the company that you're a CEO of now,
Mm.
Opyl. Um, what is that company about, and what do they do?
Yeah, totally. So the company is called Opal. The main product that we sell is called Trial Key.
Okay,
So what we do is we use AI and a bit of med tech to predict the outcome of clinical trials. Um,
okay,
so all we did is we got 350,000 clinical trials, built our own ChatGPT style LLM that was finely tuned for clinical data. We've picked up 700 variables per trial. Now it's up to about 1,300 variables per trial. We try to figure out what leads to a trial succeeding. Is it the number of patients? Is it the condition? Is it the primary endpoints? Is it the dosage? Is it the compound? Like, what are all the facets of a trial? We know what trials succeeded, what trials failed. And now, like 3 years and $20 million later, we can predict whether a clinical trial will succeed with about 90% accuracy before you start.
Wow.
So there's two main use cases. One use case is on the investment community. So we've already licensed this off to a fund where they'll buy and sell pharmaceutical shares based on our recommendations of whether the trial will succeed or not.
Mm-hmm.
I invest personally, and it's been a fantastic quarter for me.
Yeah.
And then the second use case is we, about 2 months ago, we built a generative model. So if you're doing a trial, so I don't know, let's say you want to treat lung cancer, phase 2 trial, a drug, and you type in your underlying compound or mechanism, is we'll actually generate a clinical trial which is geared up for success. So,
Okay. So you kind of use the model to figure out what might be a successful way to set up a clinical trial.
yeah, exactly.
So do you
And
guys
sorry, I just have one other question.
go for it?
What what makes a trial fail or succeed? Like, what are the main reasons for that?
So especially in phase 2 and phase 3, it's often not the underlying mechanism or the medicine.
Mm-hmm.
What we've found is actually trial design. So not having enough patients, recruiting in the wrong area, not having enough endpoints. There's about, like I said, about 1,300 variables you can change when you do a trial design.
Yeah.
Because invariably what happens when you design a trial, it's designed on that doctor's historical experience. And that's kind of very narrow, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all we do is we use the experience of every trial that humanity has done over the last 25 years and
Mm-hmm.
use that to design the best trial.
Okay.
And this data set, where do you get this data set to begin with, actually?
So the brilliance of it is it's all publicly available. So if
Okay.
you want FDA approval, you got to lodge all this stuff on clinicaltrials.gov.
Yeah.
Our real IP and why this kind of took 3 years to bring together is the curation of that data.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of there, but it's not very useful. It's very unstructured.
Yeah.
And that's what LLMs have allowed us to do, go from very, very unstructured, dirty data to quite clean data that we can actually put into a model.
Sure, sure. I have another question.
Hmm.
For if I'm not mistaken, Opal doesn't have a history of using AI, right? So this is something that's completely new. Is this also an AI that you guys developed, or do you use like some different engine?
Yeah, so a bit of context. So the CTO of Opal, he used to be a professional poker player, as you do.
Right.
He's a statistician.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he went into sports gambling. So
Mm,
you have 1,000 variables, you have an outcome whether someone wins or loses a game.
yeah.
And he built a model that predicted that. And he was like $10 million a month kind of thing worth of revenue through that. And then all he's done now is just apply that to clinical trials where you have a whole bunch of variables and you got to figure out, and you have an outcome, and you figure out
Yeah.
what variable leads that outcome, and you can build a predictive model based on it.
Wow. Okay, but no
Cool.
background in health tech or anything like that.
No, not really, because ironically, like when we first started and decided, hey, this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
like what we're doing is quite disruptive. So
Mhm.
often what you find is if you have a lot of experience, it actually stifles creativity.
Mhm.
So like if you ask any medical person, a year ago, is it possible to predict the outcome of a clinical trial with 90% accuracy before you start? Every single person would say no,
I'd say
right?
no, right? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, in the same way, before I saw ChatGPT, I thought that was totally impossible. I
Yeah.
thought in my lifetime they would not solve the Turing test,
Yeah.
but they totally have. So it's just
Mm,
one of those things where a lot of experience is actually not good in these kind of domains.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And what motivated you to join Opal in the first place? Is there any reason that Opal particularly stood out to you? Because I'm sure you have lots of opportunities that come up to you.
Yeah, so I mean, probably what it was, I mean, it was a bit of an affinity for the model that they built. So back when I was at uni, I built back in the days when it wasn't even called AI, it was called machine learning. So actually my thesis was a model that predicted the likelihood of cancer based on about 50 odd variables, which was the maximum data set you could really get back in those days. And it was kind of okay. It was 50, 60% back in those days. It was a combination of a neural network and a decision tree. Um, So just the fact that someone had kind of taken that kind of thing and actually properly productionized it, I thought that's pretty cool. So kind of fun, exciting, and I thought there's something to AI. I thought that like 20 years ago, and it's kind of finally come together, and I've got an opportunity to be a part of it, which was super exciting.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. Um, and just like going back to the AI, because you're getting so much patient data or like clinical trial data, have you thought about privacy and how like that might be like impacting patients, or if there's any privacy concerns related to that?
Not really, because we tend not to get patient level data because that always just gets a bit too complex.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to only get the clinical trial level data, which is kind of publicly available anyway.
Okay.
All we do is we just curate that a bit different to anybody else.
Okay.
Right. So it's the curation that separates you from competitors. I assume that you also have competitors in this field.
Yeah, so there's probably two other companies that are trying to do this. One got taken private for like $1.2 billion about a year ago.
Sure.
And the other one hasn't launched to market. So there's other people out there. We think we've got the highest accuracy rate, about 90%. The other guys are still in the 80s. And
Mm.
it's the curation of the data. Like that's what takes the time.
So
Mm.
I just want to better understand this, right? Um, let's say there's a trial that I want to do.
Hmm.
How can I use Opal to predict the usefulness of the trial or the successfulness of the trial?
So basically, all you'll do is you'll go onto our model and you'll say, awesome, I want to, like what's the condition that you're interested in? Just
Let's say like cancer, right? Like,
cancer, awesome. So cancer, you'll select which subtype of cancer, you'll select what phase, you'll say it's a drug or radiation, whatever therapy it is.
yeah.
You'll say what the underlying mechanism is that you're using. It's a CAR T cell or whatever it is, or immunotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll generate that trial for you.
Okay. And then, okay, so I don't even need to worry about creating my own trial. I just like write all the information down of what I want to test, and then it can generate the trial.
Yeah. So kind of think of it like you're kind of prompting like a chat GPT style engine.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
out
I
of
think that
that,
makes
we'll
sense.
generate like a 50-page clinical trial synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
It has every variable geared for success. So we'll tell you exactly how many patients you should have, what sites you should be at, what dosage, what primary outcomes, all the deeply clinical data that
Mm-hmm.
we can get from other similar trials.
Mm-hmm.
We'll kind of populate a synopsis for you.
Okay. And can you give us like any
Hmm.
success stories that people have used Opal and
Hmm.
found it useful?
Yeah, so we've got our first set of paying customers. So the most recent one is a neuro device to deal to help with ADHD, help with depression, postpartum, and a couple other things.
Mm-hmm.
So in their case, they wanted to do the trial in AI first before they did in people. Ran through 7 different trials. They figured depression is where their device is going to work the best, and we
Yeah.
actually generated a trial synopsis for them. Something they normally would have paid like 100 grand for, per trial synopsis. We did 7. In our world, it's like 5 grand. So we try to be quite disruptive from a pricing perspective as well.
Wow,
Wow.
that's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
huge difference.
kind of hope so. And I think what will eventually happen, this will just be a thing that you do before you run a clinical trial. You'll
Mm-hmm.
run an AI model like ours before you ever do it in people.
Yep,
Okay.
sure. Do you mind explaining the business model to our listeners real quick? Because I'm quite curious whether this is a B2B sort of thing that you do right now, or
It's very much B2B. Yeah. So
right.
there's two clients on the fund or the investor side. So the one we've set up now, it's a 2 and 20 fund. So they charge 2% of the manage of funds under management and 20% of upside.
Yep.
We get 25% of that as a cut for our tech.
Mhm.
And then for more the pharmaceuticals, the researchers to design the trial, we charge 5 grand per trial.
Oh wow, okay.
That's amazing. And in your like, you say it's been going on for 3 years, right? Like Opal.
Mm.
Um, what do you think are the biggest challenges the company has faced, or like since you've joined, like what are the biggest challenges that you've encountered?
Oh, look, it's probably the biggest thing is actually to figure out that product market fit.
Okay.
Just to make sure, hey, is what we're selling something someone's happy to pay some money for?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And like how
I
have you
think
tried
we've
to overcome like
And I
that
think we've
issue?
got it right now. I mean, most of it. So when I came, we built out the marketing team, got a tight team of 5 people there, got a salesperson there.
Yeah.
I sit in a lot of the sales calls myself as well. And initially I did,
Mm-hmm.
to help kind of figure out like what are people asking for compared to what we have. And then
Mm-hmm.
you've got to really make sure then you really point the tech team into that direction.
And who are like your target customers? Is it pharmaceutical companies or is it like individual like scientists or people like that who are trying to come up with new
It's
therapies?
mostly the actual
Okay.
farmers or the Australian bio, because they're the guys that actually have the money to actually run some of these trials,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and they're our target customer.
Yeah. And have you thought about like expanding outside of Australia as well?
Yeah, very much so. So, the CTO and I, we were over in London a couple of months ago. We were at the Global Clinical Trials Conference. We had a guest speaking slot there. Some of the team were in Taiwan a month ago. They're off to Hong Kong next month.
Okay.
Um, so, I mean, Australia is a good place to start, but you tend not to have a lot of large-scale clinical trials here.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to be mostly in Europe and the States. We just need to get enough revenue so we can actually effectively expand out there.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense.
What I'm curious about right now is also how does it compare to existing engines? For example, if you were to ask ChatGPT to run a clinical trial, for example, would it be much different from what you guys are offering?
Yeah, so look, I mean, ChatGPT is great for like generic data,
Yeah,
and you can totally say, "Hey, design me a clinical trial synopsis for this condition with these
yeah,
things," but it tends not to. It will assemble the words for you,
yeah.
but it won't be a trial that's optimized for success. So they
Okay.
won't look at the other 15,000 cancer trials that are happening right now and be like, "Hey, for this type of cancer, you need 772 patients. That's the precise number to succeed." So it won't do any of that optimization work for you.
I see,
So
I
this is
see.
more like specialized.
More
It's like
tailored.
a finely tuned model.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And only part of it is so there's three parts. One, it's the unstructured structured variables. It's the figuring out what variables are meaningful. And then the third part is the document generation, which is more like the chat GPT stuff.
Okay. Okay. And what role do you see AI playing in the future? Because obviously, I think medical industry is very traditional in some ways, right? But AI has been disrupting it quite a lot. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think what it is, I mean, I think the body of knowledge has just expanded so much that one person can't know everything about medicine, and that probably has been the case for a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
But there are connections between different types of medicine. Like something like cancer, right? You've got literally 15,000 trials that are happening in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no way to actually for a human to understand that full knowledge set.
Yeah.
But it is so easy for AI or for a computer to do it. And that's all a computer does, is it synthesizes all that knowledge set and helps you figure out what is relevant for you.
So it just makes it more manageable, right? Like because we can't comprehend all the things that are going on.
Yeah, totally. And then he'll give you the information, then you as the doctor or the principal investigator, you can make those kind of decisions.
Do you think it can also like help us come up with new cures for things?
Hmm. So a large area that we're not involved in is drug discovery as well.
Yeah.
So there's heaps of people that are still kind of figuring out that model. I don't think it's totally there yet, but I think that will totally be a thing where you'll just do billions of simulations in an AI model, and
Mm-hmm.
then you'll figure out which ones work really, really well, and that's the ones that you'll try in people.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's quite a large scope potentially
Mm.
there because I think I saw some videos where like AI is able to come up with new medicines that people have not thought of and like it just
Totally.
works better.
Yeah.
Mm. In your opinion, Saurabh, where do you see Opal heading in the future? And what is your own vision, perhaps, for Opal?
Yeah, so look, I mean, I think one day it'll be like completely unethical to do a trial in people as it's been done in an AI model. That will just totally be a thing. In the same way, I reckon in 20 years, like you won't learn to drive in a car. Like, why would you? That's so unsafe. You'd learn to drive in a simulator first.
Yeah.
And once you pass the simulator, then you can actually drive in a car. So I think that's probably inevitable. I think it's like 3 to 5 years away, that will just be a thing.
Wait,
And
so you're saying that you won't be doing testing on humans just like straight up in the AI simulation?
yes, I think you'll always do it in the AI simulation first. And
Yeah.
then when it's safe and you have a good probability of success, then you'll do it in people.
Mhm.
Okay. I
Um,
guess that's why they do animal trials, right? Though, like, because they don't want
yeah,
to
so
inject like some random drug into a human. But I guess yeah, a better way to like do that would be to just do it in the simulation, so
you
you
do
don't
the
have to worry about
simulation
it.
and then you do phase zero in animals and then you'll do phase one in people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That would be, I think,
Mm.
really interesting. Um, but yeah, another topic we want to talk about is meditation because
Hmm.
we both like have dabbled into it a little bit.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like when did you start with your meditation, and how's your journey been so far?
Yeah, so look, I probably spend more time doing that than probably anything else. If I'm probably awake, that's probably what I'm doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I
How
probably
many
do.
hours would you say you spend like in a day or like in a week?
Oh, look, like in a year, I'll probably do about 2,000 hours this year.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Okay.
Like if you're going to do it, you want to do it properly. So I spent about 100 days last year in silent meditation, two 45-day courses, and a 10-day course, 2 hours every day. And I've just booked in my next 45-day course in January off in South Korea.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, that's part of
Um,
the reason I don't work full time anymore, because like just working full time would get in the way of the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I don't think it's worth the sacrifice.
So like what have you found through like those, because that's a lot of time you spend meditating, right? Like have you had any profound experiences so far?
Let me answer your question with a question. What's your understanding of meditation? And I might give a kind of a cogent answer around that level.
Well, so for me, it's just like doing like 5 to 10 minutes a day, that kind of
Mhm.
thing. Like I haven't done any extended like that. Like the max I've probably done in a single session is like 30 minutes.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, like just doing meditation to help me feel more calm, feel more connected to my surroundings, and just taking life easy a little bit, I guess.
yeah. Okay. And what about yourself as well? Like, have you done much or?
Um, me myself, I haven't done too much. A friend of mine,
Mm,
he's really into meditation, and he's always
mm,
told me to get into it. So I started off doing I'm not sure what it's called. I think it's like object meditation, where there's like an object
mm.
in front of you. So I had a candle. I was looking into the candle, and I was trying to focus on my breathing, focus on the candle. Um, he's a monk right now. He's in
Yeah,
Thailand. He's in a monastery and everything. Um, but for myself, I think it's just something that you do to to be more in touch with yourself, to kind of focus on your breathing,
yeah,
be with yourself and be in the present. And then yeah, I think that's it. And then obviously there are a bunch of science-backed benefits that come with
mhm,
meditation,
yeah.
but I'm not fully aware of them either, because I don't
Mm,
think I've invested enough time to
yeah.
meditation. Yeah.
Okay, so the way it works is if so Eddie, you kind of said you do 5 or 10 minutes or maybe 30 minutes sometimes. Um, so the reason you do that and the reason you probably find that slightly calming is that just turns the volume down a tiny bit on your internal monologue, or
Mm-hmm.
perhaps just slows down the internal monologue. Now, if you keep going down that path, you get to a stage where the internal monologue completely goes. So for me, I actually don't have a monologue anymore, unless I've had a really stressful experience.
Yeah.
My mind doesn't talk to me anymore. Um, so the immediate benefit is the mind is quiet, and there's insane pleasure in having a quiet mind. I mean that's why people, they'll be like, oh yeah, I run and that's meditation. Well, it isn't, but what is happening is you're physically involved in something, so the mind is a bit preoccupied, so it's talking to you less.
Okay.
Um, and there is a lot of pleasure in just of that release of the discursive rhetoric slowing down. So that's like the first part of meditation, where it's just, hey, I want a quiet mind, I want to be a bit calmer, those kind of things. The second, more probably deeper and more complex part is you actually get to purify the mind. So all the stuff that you do that's either been genetically programmed into you, or you've had trauma of the past, or you got teased as a kid and you just remembered in the back of your mind, you can be completely freed of all those things. So you do,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what takes a lot longer and a lot more meditation to do. But one by one, all the traumas of the past, you can get over. So what it kind of means is you live a life where there's just the highs, and you actually don't have the lows anymore. And you realize having the lows is like a completely optional thing to do. You can train your mind to not actually have them anymore.
That sounds very interesting. I
Mm,
have a few questions from that. Like
yeah.
first is like I know what you mean by an internal monologue, right? But like what does it feel like to not have one? Like so you, like when you say something, like are you just not thinking about it at all, or are you just like saying the first thing that comes to your mind, or what, how does that work?
Yeah, so even think about as you say something, um, 99% of the time you're not thinking about what you're saying, yet
Mm-hmm.
somehow you still stumble and make it to the end of a sentence. like every sentence you start, you actually don't know how you're going to end, but somehow you
That's
do,
funny.
right? And somehow it kind
Yeah.
of makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that's actually how the probabilistic algorithms in ChatGPT work. That's why it feels so human-like.
Yeah.
So what happens is your mental discursion is often not about the topic at hand. It's often about something that's happened in the past, something that's happened in the future. And when that's completely silent, you actually don't need to cognitively think about things. Things just kind of seem to somehow come together. Somehow the subconscious mind does it. And it just understands the depth of the problem a lot better. And because you're not busy, fantasizing about dinner right now, you're in the moment,
Yeah.
you tend to remember things a lot better. So I finally got like the intellect I wish I was born with, but the mind is sharp. I don't take notes anymore. I remember every conversation I've had for the last 20 years, it just kind of sticks because I'm super present when I have that experience with somebody. And
Hmm.
then I've got very, very good memory recall as well. Because the mind is very quiet. You can recall things much easier as well.
Okay. You don't have all the like extra distractions.
Yeah, no, totally. So the analogy that someone told me, it's a bit like kneading dough, right? You have all these, billions of pieces of flour and you work hard, put a bit of water into it, and you get like a single object. It's
Hmm.
kind of it's kind of like that. I mean, it's kind of loosely called the unification of the mind, where you're able to focus your mind or your entire mind on like a single topic or a single task.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes sense. And the other thing you mentioned is like there's no lows, right? And like a classic quote here you'll hear is like, how can you have the highs without the lows, right? So what's your take on that? Like how can don't you feel like it's a bit more monotonous if you just have like all the highs but no lows?
I think it's the coolest thing ever. I think what happens is a lot of people intellectualize about these things that actually don't experience it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they intellectualize, oh wow, what if I had all the highs, but I didn't have any lows? But you got to have the lows to have the highs.
Yep.
They've not lived a life without lows. So
Mm.
that's kind of cool and kind of fun and intellectually stimulating, but that's actually not the reality. Um, it's a bit like, people that will read, I don't know, a science book or a maths book, or they'll try to memorize some of Newton stuff, but they don't understand the foundations of differential calculus.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand the foundations, you can pontificate as much as you possibly want,
Mm-hmm.
and you can argue like a lawyer and have all these great, great ideas.
Mhm.
But I think it's about experiencing these kind of things for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
when you do, you'll totally get it. A life with highs and hopefully one day no lows, but less lows is actually a really cool place to be. Like your median state is actually much, much higher.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I guess like you don't have it's not like you don't have any lows at all, but like you have a lot more highs and then you're like generally more stable. So that just makes your mood much better.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I think theoretically what someone who's enlightened is, someone who actually just has the highs and doesn't have the
Yeah.
lows. But I'm
Yeah.
not quite there yet, but
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
one day.
Yeah. And one other question I want to ask is when did you begin this meditation journey and how long do you think it took you to get to the stage that you are at now?
Well, I mean, I did my first course about 20 years ago. I was probably 21, 22 at the time, so 21 years ago.
Yeah.
Didn't really take it seriously till about 10 years ago. So 10 years ago is when I started to do, a good 20 or 30 days every year of courses and get into my daily practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it just takes a decade.
Wow.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, there is no shortcut. You
There's
just
no
have to do
shortcut, right?
you have to
Yeah.
do your 10,000 hours. There is no shortcut to it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's why now I'm doing 2,000 hours a year. Because I just figure, hey, over the next number of years, let me get as many hours in as I can, so I can somehow try to get actually good at this.
Yep.
Wow.
May I ask perhaps what your practice consists of? What is it that you
Yeah,
do?
yeah, totally. So the one that I do, it's Vipassana. That's what it's called. It's a Buddhist technique.
Yep.
So basically, one third is quieting the mind down. So simple breathing. So your mind stops talking to you. By the way, you'll find, and I'm sure your monk friend will find one day as well, that visualizing objects, it's actually a dead end.
Right.
Because there's a stage beyond visualization.
Right.
You kind of get stuck there and you won't get past like, have you heard of the jhanas? There's eight jhanas, eight depths of
Yes, yes.
concentration.
You did tell me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you actually can't get past the fourth. And I bet your friend hasn't if you're visualizing.
I
Wait,
don't think
what is
he's
that? Do you mind quickly explaining that? Because I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, so this is an old Hindu concept. So there's 8 levels of concentration. Four with the body, four with the mind. And they say to get to the depth of meditation, you got to get to at least level 4. And the fourth one is where it's completely silent. There's actually
Okay.
nothing else going on in the mind. Even the slightest breath is like really disruptive, really irritating.
Okay.
And then when you get to the 5th, that's more so when the senses actually disaggregate. That's when you can't see, you can't hear, and all those kind of things because the mind becomes so focused and so subtle. So you'll find if you visualize on an object or verbalize or those kind of things, you can't. I've not met someone who's been able to get past the 4th jhana. Might be possible. I just haven't seen them. So for 1/3, it's about the concentration because that's like a foundation. And the one that I do, Vipassana, the theory behind it is like all the things that have happened to you that traumatize you or that have formed you the way you are, they get stuck in a really deep part of the mind. In the part of a mind that's connected with the body but doesn't understand language anymore. And you need to completely retrain this part of the mind. And they've got a technique. You can go and do a 10-day course, you learn how it works, but you learn how one by one all these historical things that have happened to you, they come up again, you deal with it again. Hopefully you don't react as badly this time.
Yeah.
And then you get freed of it. So the analogy will be like, I don't know, let's just say you had a really stressful exam you hadn't studied for, you forgot to do your assignment, you felt like a real pit in your stomach or something. Now, what will happen is every single time you feel that pit in your stomach, that's actually because of that stress of that exam or that assignment you didn't hand in. And after a while, you'll totally forget about that assignment, but you still have that pit in your stomach on a real subtle level. And so you got to figure out like how to actually pull that thought out of the mind and be freed of it. And that's what this technique teaches.
Okay, that's very interesting. What's the technique called again?
It's called Vipassana, Vipassana. Google it. There's like 100 centers around the world. There's one in Melbourne as well. I've been to that center. I'm sure there's heaps up in Thailand, I'm sure. Yeah, do a 10-day course and you'll get to know it.
Yeah, because I think that sounds super interesting. I'll definitely check it out.
I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure you did a lot of courses throughout the years. Is there a specific mentor or figure that you personally look up to or that you've gained a lot from?
I mean, they've got like a main teacher who died like 10 years ago, and they've got all these teachers around who they kind of keep teaching it and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got like Macca's style standardization, so every center in the world is run the exact same way, all 100 or so of them.
Yep.
So no, so one of the things they teach about is like after you've done a bit of this, like you actually want to be your own master.
Yep.
Like you don't want to have to look up to somebody else, or like totally you're reading, you'll talk to your friends and those kind of things. But they're really against kind of worshiping someone else or kind of blindly following someone else. It's very much an experiential path. So even when you go on like the 45-day courses on day 25 and day 35-ish, you get to talk to a teacher for a couple of minutes just to check in, see how you're going. But almost whatever you ask them, they just tell you to sit and meditate more and experience it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because the truth that you experience it for yourself is just so much more true for you than anything someone else can tell you.
So teachers are like, they're not really teaching you anything. They're just telling you to kind of learn it by yourself, right? And see
Yeah,
what feels right for you.
like they'll teach you the technique or they'll clarify
Yeah.
things about the technique, but they won't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
They just tell you to go kind of figure it out yourself.
I guess it's
I
kind
think
of
that's
like a coach at the gym, right? They tell you if you're doing something right or wrong, if you're doing the right posture or whatever, but then you have to experience it yourself, and then do it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, that sounds super interesting, to be honest. And yeah, like I'm glad to hear that you have been like it's been 10 years. Like 10 years is a long time to regularly meditate, and that you've got such like insightful experiences because of it.
Well, it's one of those things. So, like, normally you start with like a 10-day course, and only like I know 7% of people do their second course, and almost no one does their third.
Yeah.
Because it is like such a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, except for probably 2 or 3 other people that I meditate with sometimes on different courses, very few people actually do the hard work to invest in themselves to, improve their mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to just not.
Just
Yeah,
not do
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like one thing I'm wondering is that you've mastered this, I'd say, like quite well, right? Like so far. So like why do you need to still like keep doing these courses? Can't you just meditate by yourself and like get to the next level? Or like
I
what's the
am
reason behind like joining these courses?
I am so far away from mastering it. Like
Okay.
I every now and then something horrible happens in real life. I'm like, damn, I'm so human still. Um,
Okay.
it's like that movie Universal Soldier, like only human kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so look, I think what it is like, so this next one I'll do 45 days. Does all the everything around you just set up for you to just meditate? So someone else cooks for you, someone else kind of does all the cleaning for you. There's a nice meditation hall. You're away from the wife, the kids, all those kind of things. And you take that time as a gift that you got this time that someone else has kind of, donated to this center.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go and meditate.
Okay.
Because otherwise I just don't have the discipline to do like, 16 hours a day. Even getting 2 hours a day in, living a normal life is very, very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why, a lot of people become monks, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
they want to set up all the environment to suit them. I'm probably not going to do that. That's probably not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just doing it this way kind of seems to work for me.
Sounds good. Well, I think we've been going for a while now, and we'll move to the closing section of the podcast. So we have a few questions
Hmm.
that we like to ask our guests. And one of these is a new addition, so we'd love to hear your take on it. Um, so what we want to ask you is like, do you believe in any conspiracy theories? And if so, like, tell us more about it.
Oh, totally. So my pet one is like AI. Like it's so going to kill us.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's probably not. It's like nuclear power, right? They thought
Yeah,
nuclear warheads were going to kill humanity. Luckily enough, we somehow kind of skated through.
yeah.
But like, yeah, I'm sure you've seen some of the robots they're building out there right now. Just pop
Mm-hmm.
a gun on one and get like a factory to produce a whole army full of them.
Yeah.
I think it'll be the next nuclear power kind of thing. We'll have to figure out how to make sure it doesn't kill us.
Well, it's funny because you're working in an AI company
It's quite
yourself, so
ironic.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Well, if you can't beat them, join them kind of thing.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Uh, Another question we'd love to ask our guests as well is for their favorite book, or if you have a few, you could mention them as well, or if you listen to any podcast, that'll be fine too.
Yeah, so probably going through a couple of books right now. I'll just fire up my little Audible subscription. I'll tell you probably
Yeah, no
a
worries.
few good ones actually recently. Let me tell you what they were.
Yep.
Um, Playing to Win. It's like a really good management one that I'm just finishing off right now. Enterprise 2.0. The Goal, all about constraint theory when it comes to businesses and how businesses run. And
Mhm.
probably my favorite one this year has been Super Communicators.
Okay.
So it's just a book about like some people you meet, they just talk really well, engage really well with people, and within 5 minutes you're like, oh my God, I've known you forever.
Yeah.
It just kind of dissects what is it about those people that actually give them that ability.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah. Gotta
Hmm.
put it on my
Yeah, I
own
think I
to read list now.
yeah, for sure. I think definitely want to improve my conversation skills, so I
Yep.
think that would be
Totally.
good.
Hmm.
And lastly, do you have anything to share with our audience? This could be a plug for something you do, or just a final message that you want to send to them.
Well, probably just, I mean, the stuff we're doing at Trial Key, it's super exciting. I reckon this will be the future of clinical trials. Like I said, every trial will happen in AI first before it happens in people.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're super lucky. We're like on the cusp of this journey.
Okay. Well, it was lovely to have you on the podcast,
You
Saurabh,
do.
and we wish you all the best with like your meditation, with Trial Key, and anything else you choose to undertake in the future.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.